Hello, ladies and gentlemen of the internet, and welcome back to Fanalysis Star Wars. I'm Callum, this is Evan.
Hello, everyone.
And today we're going to be doing something a little bit different, Evan. What are we covering?
Well, after 7 years, we are finally covering another video game in the Star Wars universe, this being Jedi Power Battles, a classic. Now, the reason we are talking about this now is because they have recently released
Recently
I
for
should say
us.
recently
Recently
by,
for us.
yeah, recently by our standards, recently by our standards, they released a remaster of this game, so it's all fresh in our minds, and we thought we would take the time to talk about it. There's other reasons we'll be talking about it too, which we will discuss shortly. But yes, so this is often considered a classic by most Star Wars video game fans. It is one of the few Star Wars platformers in existence, which the more I think about it, the more awkward that always seems because it seems like such an obvious genre when you're dealing with sci-fi fantasy, especially when with characters who have like superhuman abilities, which I always found interesting. Also, it's worth mentioning that this game is a tie-in to Episode One, The Phantom Menace. It was released
One of
in the
two.
year 2000. Yes, the year 2000, not to be confused with Episode Two. Um, so there's a lot of unique qualities to this game, which I honestly think makes it endearing for both of us and a lot of fans even to this day. So, Callan, how did you first come to this game?
Well, this was... Well, first of all, it was the first Star Wars game I ever played. So it's got that
Really?
high
Period?
title. Yeah,
Okay.
period. I'm pretty sure that's the case. I can't think of any that came prior. I mean, there was the Phantom Menace game. It was funny because
Starfighter?
Starfighter was afterwards, was it not?
It had to be close.
It
I
was.
think you're
I
right,
think. I
though.
think it was shortly afterwards because Starfighter was PS2.
I think so. It was like
Yeah,
early PS2, and
yeah.
this
I
was
know.
like so. This we should clarify. This original release, this was released on the PlayStation, and this was later ported to the Dreamcast. Which I think the Dreamcast version is what a lot of people are more familiar with because the Dreamcast version ironed out some of the initial bugs and even added the character of Kiadi Mundi into the game. The Dreamcast version is also the base that they used for the remaster that they released recently, as the name obviously suggests. It's a graphical upgrade along with a few other little quirks such as unlockable characters, a different sort of menu, and just sort of a it's I wouldn't call it a remake, but I wouldn't call it just a HD upgrade either because it
Yeah, no.
does
It's
add a
definitely a
few
complete.
things. What
Yeah,
would you refer to it as?
I would say remake because it has changed some things fundamentally. I don't know if that's the case for the Dreamcast version because I only ever played the PlayStation One, but just we played
Well,
a
the
brief.
remake is the Dreamcast version.
Well, in that case, yeah, they changed some things from that point because from the PS1 version because I remember there's certain little quirks about the game. It's a bit of a janky game by nature. But in a fun way. It's one of those things where the
Mhm.
ways in which
It's as fun as it is frustrating, and that's
yeah,
what it's really
particularly in
known
the
for.
platforming. I mean, there are certain levels that suffer from that more than others. But yeah, this was a game back in the day where you would be watching desperately, cling close to the screen to watch the very
Mhm.
small silhouette shadow as you're trying to jump over that exact plant and land on that mushroom head. It was not an easy thing to navigate, particularly for the age we were. I mean, I first played this game, like I said, it was the first ever Star Wars game that I played. So this was back when I was 5, it releasing in 2000. So yeah, it always has had a special place in my heart because this is I mean we mentioned briefly that the Phantom Menace game came out in the same year, right? This was in tandem. There
Mhm.
were two games of Phantom Menace. There was
It,
Jedi Power
it
Battles,
was a
and there
deliberate
was
tie-in. There was a lot of games coming out in this sort of particular
mm,
Phantom Menace era.
all excitedly
Power
jumping on the
Battle,
'90s Star Wars hype.
yeah, Power Battles, like obviously, also the original Phantom Menace tie-in game. I think the Obi-Wan game was
Mm.
also in this sort of batch. What was it called? Oh, Pod Racer,
Yeah, was that a
obviously.
little bit later, or I lost track because I was on the PlayStation train, so I never had anything to do with any of the other platforms or systems rather.
I was too, so I wouldn't know.
Yeah, so
Correct
this
us in the comments if we're a little bit off with the dates, because this particular era of Star Wars gaming, there was a lot being released in rather quick succession on a variety of
yeah, it was definitely
platforms.
one of the heights of the franchise for gaming. That's for sure. Shortly followed by the PS2 era. But yeah, no,
Mhm.
I went to the this is one of my clear memories from back then for gaming. I went to the game store in my local town. My father drove us over from the village I grew up in, and we had a look, and it was I can remember being like, which one do I get? You know, the Jedi Power Battles or the Phantom Menace? I'm like, I don't know. They kind of look sort of the same. I flip a coin, and I went for Power Battles, and I'm very glad I did. I mean, this game is an absolute classic. I don't know a single person who has played it who didn't love it back in the day.
Well, the game doesn't always love you, but
Yeah,
yes,
yeah,
it
very
is
true,
it is an
very true.
enjoyable experience. I think we should preface this too. Like, this is not, even though it's a Phantom Menace tie-in and it does broadly cover the story of the films, it's not what you would call the most immersive experience.
Yeah, it's very much a game.
um,
Like, this is not a story
yes.
in the same way as some other games, but it was kind of leaning into the style of its era, you know, for that style of games. But yeah, it's an experience. It's fun. It's arcadey in the way you'd explain that, I suppose.
Arcadey, that's a good way of describing it.
Yeah, arcade action platform, effectively. And yeah, a lot of fun. I'm so glad I went for that one because I've never regretted it. It was funny because it's not a game you'd expect to get remastered, but at the same time, like we're saying, everyone enjoyed it back in the day, so why not? And it was one of those ones I played a lot with friends. I mean, my friend, my cousin. It was a classic that we cracked open pretty much every time anyone was visiting, you know, or I was ever at someone else's house. It was a mainstay of my PlayStation 1 era, and it definitely deserves that space. You know, it's a lot of fun. It's not particularly deep in terms of what the kind of storytelling it's delivering. That's more later for the PS2 and PC era for things like Knights of the Old Republic. It wasn't meant to be that. But for the arcade action platform that it is, it was a lot of fun. And with that extra layer of, you know, junkiness that makes it kind of, ooh, this is not an easy game for a child to be playing. It just kind of adds to all the memories.
Yeah. Most people, I even remember when this remake was first announced, and there were a lot of people in the comments saying, I never got past level 1. I only got as far as level 3. I only,
It was
but they
level
all
2.
loved it.
That was the bastard, Naboo, with the bloody
Yeah.
the mushroom platform. I remember that being an absolute pain in the ass, trying to gauge what the depth was for the leaps and the platforms you've got to make it to.
Which they very specifically ironed out a bit in the Dreamcast version, which obviously was not a coincidence. My history with this game is also fairly simple. I never really owned it personally, at least up until now. Well, later in life, because I never had a PlayStation 1. However, I had a lot of friends growing up. I was about 7 or 8-ish at the time. This was a few years after the game came out, obviously, but like you were saying before, it had a lot of staying power with a lot of Star Wars fans, and I had friends who had PlayStations who had it, and whenever we hung out at some of our friends' houses, we would play it, we would take turns, and much of the same experiences apply. It really is one of those things you play with like your buddies, and like you try and see who can get the most power-ups, or how far you can get without dying, or how many lives you can save before eventually getting frustrated and passing your controller up to the guy next to you to see if he could beat your score. I mean, just little experiences like that, I think, further aid into why this game resonates with so many people. Because like you're saying, it's not very deep. The story is, I mean,
it's the Phantom Menace.
It's basically, I mean, everyone was familiar with it, but at the same time, its simplicity is very much its strength, and it really goes to show how you don't always need those elements to make a immersive, enjoyable experience. Because at the end of the day, video games are just all about fun, and this game was fun. So we appreciate it.
It's also notable for being the introduction in video game form for Plo Koon and Adigalia as well. It was an interesting choice that they chose those for this
character
roster. Yeah, this
and Mace
was
Windu
the game
as well at the time.
Yeah, absolutely, with the different lightsaber colors as well involved. It was a good choice. This game is the reason I'm a fan of Plo Koon. You know, this was the thing that led me on that path. I mean, this was what brought that to me and into that side of Star Wars. With his yellow lightsaber, it's yellow, not blue. Damn it.
Yeah, obviously a reference to the EU comics at the time, where
which
the
decided to
saber colors were depicted differently. With his blue saber, Adi Gallia with her red saber. Interestingly enough, Kiadi Mundi, even though he had a purple saber at the time, or in most sources, they gave him a blue one when they added him to the game in the Dreamcast version, despite the fact that I don't believe, no, Attack of the Clones would not have been out by then. So it's interesting that they did that, little quirks.
Yeah.
Which is whatever. But again, little points like that you're right. This was an introduction to those characters for a lot of people. I mean, we mentioned Starfighter before. Adi Gallia was also
I was
a
about to
big
say, yeah, that
point in
she
that
transitioned off
as
to be
well.
the kind of one of the video
Mhm.
game choices, wasn't she, in terms of the Council Jedi?
Not so much with Plo Koon, funnily enough.
No, he kind of fell off. He didn't get any material outside of the comics until Clone Wars, really, when he started. It was obviously a favorite of Dave Filoni, possibly because of this
Mhm.
game. Who knows?
Maybe.
But yeah, no, I played Jedi Starfighter was the second of the run of Star Wars games I kind of got properly into. I never played Starfighter itself until later, anyway. But yeah, Jedi Starfighter was my introduction to Adi Gallia and beyond Power Battles, and then kind of stepping
Mhm.
forward into that era of the follow up with Battlefront and Battlefront 2, some of the best Star
Of
Wars games
course.
ever. Getting into Academy, all this great run of PS2
The
games. It
Dark
was kind
Forces
of
series, Knights of the
yeah,
Old Republic, Force Unleashed in its own way.
yeah. I was never a big. I dropped off Star Wars games by the time of Force Unleashed, with the exception of the MMO. I hadn't kind of dabbled with that much, and never particularly interested in that game. But yeah, it's a
Public
fan favorite for
Commandos?
good reason. I played a bit of that, yeah. Not too much. I need to go back and play that.
Wouldn't
Actually, I've
mind
got
a
that on Steam.
remaster of that, by the way, I will say.
Yes, that definitely deserves one. It would do well, I think, in the sales. But yeah, it all started for me with Power Battles. This was the
Mhm.
first Star Wars game that I played. It was one of the best, I think, of its
Mhm.
time. Probably the best of the three Phantom Menace kind of run.
Yeah.
And yeah, I'm looking
So
forward to
getting
playing some
yeah.
because it's been a long old time.
Yes.
I haven't played. When was the last time you played this?
Mhm.
Because I've not since. I mean, I must have been about 12.
It's probably been about the same for me.
Yeah, it's going to be fun. I've got some of the core memories of my childhood are built around this game. Some of the sound effects,
Oh, yes.
some of the character
The
maneuvers.
the
I remember a
Mhm.
lot of it.
Oh, this is interesting too. The remaster includes a dueling mode, which was
Mm,
not in the original
you have some
game.
fun
So
with that, I
you and a
think.
buddy can go, yes, you and a buddy can go head to head, one on one, which is they didn't. Again, it's one of those things like you didn't have to do that, but we appreciate that you did, and that goes back to something I've always believed when it came to remakes or remasters. If you're going to redo something, put your own spin on it, add to it, make it a different sort of experience, because if it's not, then why do I have to bother? Why don't I've played the original game, why do I need to bother with this? So
Mm.
again, this is how you do it, and I very much appreciate the time and effort that the developers put into this. And yeah, again, just going through all this again, it shows that the Star Wars gaming market is still alive and well, and these experiences are very much appreciated to this day.
Sorely neglected market as well over the years. It has not been tapped to its potential. Star Wars. Too many
Which
flops for
blows my
anyone's
freak well,
liking.
yeah, EA hasn't exactly been the best steward
Yeah,
of the why would you give it to EA is beyond me.
challenging
Like EA
everything.
is well, yes, that is they weren't always evil,
No,
but
they used to be very good, but yeah, that those times have sadly have passed a long time ago. But yeah,
it's no longer in the game.
yes,
EA Sports, it's in the game.
yeah, or big God, that's part of the. I mean, granted, we were kids, so obviously it's going to go in
We are
that way a
such
lot more
dorks.
anyway. We are. That's my favorite thing about this game, though. It
Mhm,
I'm just going to be sat there going and wah wah
mhm,
with Plo Koon's heavy strike. Like these things are just grained into my brain and they're never left.
mhm.
Um, I'm looking forward to every second of it because it's going to be fun.
Absolutely.
But yeah,
So, how would you rate this game as a game and then as a Star Wars game? Because I feel like we could have slightly different answers
oh,
for that. Because I feel as a game, it's not exactly the deepest. For what it is, though, it is entertaining as hell. A lot of the mechanics are frustrating, which I do think can and have turned people off over the years. You do have to kind of put your head into a certain space to really get into the flow of it. And I'm not saying that because it's an age thing. I mean, even other platformers at the time are probably had better mechanics going for
mm,
it. But to say that it's not entertaining, I think, is definitely a severe downplay. Now, as a Star Wars game, especially again compared to the time, again, it's not the deepest. It's not the mechanics are not the best. The power-ups are basic and it can be very frustrating. That being said, it is also great at really making you feel like you are a Jedi with the mechanics, with the limited mechanics that it has, and it makes you want to keep playing. That's the
Mm.
thing. And even though the story is not deep, it does still put you into that world where you get a sense of every stage being unique enough to where you don't feel bored. It's not like, again, like an arcade. You're not feel like you're doing things because you have to. You're doing things because you want to. So I think in that regard, it very much succeeds. What would you say?
It's very well paced. I think. I think it gives you a
Hmm.
lot of variation throughout the game at different points to cut when things start to feel a bit stale. It ups it. You know, you get to go in a tank, you get to go on a stab. You know, all these kind of things. That they use clever tricks to keep things engaging, particularly for the target audience that it was aimed at. As an overall game, I mean, objectively, it isn't doing anything that amazing. Even for the time, it's all solid. With a
Hmm.
heavy dose of just jankiness. It's a clunky game in
But
many
jank can
ways.
be good.
But
Jank
yeah,
can be
but
good.
again, but this is why it's tricky because I love it and I always did, and
Hmm.
it's tricky for a game to capture the clunk in a fun kind of heartful way. You know, you remember those moments fondly. You're not looking back going, oh my god, that game was so
Hmm.
broken. It's always, oh god, I remember that jumping pause. It was a pain in the ass to sort, but my god, when you sorted it,
But you
it
kept
was
playing.
yeah,
But you kept
exactly.
playing.
So
Exactly.
very well tuned in its design, somewhat flawed in its end result on a technically speaking, but it
Hmm.
never bothered me. I mean, I love this game, and I always have, and
Yeah,
it's ingrained in the brain, and I'm excited to play it. So,
absolutely.
shall we jump in?
Yes, we shall.
See you on the other side.
Bzz.